Well, hearing the room grow quiet, I shall call this meeting to order with probably the favorite thing to do all year. Use my gavel. There. This vestry meeting is hereby called to order. Let us pray. O God, our Heavenly Father, who has called us to be members of thy church, which is the body of thy Son, grant, we beseech thee, that thy Holy Spirit may direct us now in all our concerns and deliberations for the welfare of this parish. We give thanks to thee for all the blessings of the past year and for the opportunities of the present time. We pray thee so to lead us forward into the work that lies before us, that we may advance from strength to strength in the service of thy kingdom, and ever magnify thy holy name, through Jesus Christ our Lord. We remember especially today those who have died since last vestry. The Reverend Canon Ian Noseworthy, former associate priest who was buried from St. Nicholas Church, Toronto. On September 4th, he died. On December 8th, Father Freeland, Brian Freeland, who was buried from the convent of the Sisters of St. John the Divine, with a public requiem here in January. And on January 28th, Dr. Eva Kushner, former president of Victoria College and wife of the Reverend Canon Robert Bruce Mooch, who served as an assisting priest here until his death in 2013. Rest eternal grant unto them, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine upon them. Amen. Let's see. All right, I shall speak up and put this book away. So the next motion is to adopt the agenda. However, I would note that as a point of courtesy, I would like to move the Friends of Music report above the accessibility link update so that we can expedite that. So item number 7 will become item number 6, and vice versa, and then we'll get to everything else as we go. So I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda with that one emendation. Oh, actually, there'll be one other emendation, which is that the lay delegate to synod and the alternate delegate to synod, items 11C and D, are combined. All 4 of them are candidates for the lay delegates to synod, so we will have an election. And at that time, we'll appoint scrutineers. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved by, yes, I see, by Earl, thank you, and seconded by David Jones, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. You can say it too. Thank you. So orderly, I love it. All right, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from the February 27th vestry meeting that were posted previously on the website? There's a motion from Bob Kennedy and a second from Sean Forsyth. Thank you. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Oh, there we go. Warming up a bit. And then we move on now to the rector's report. So that would be me. As is my wont, I intended to give a State of the Church address as my rector's report, followed by a longer year in review to be published after this meeting. I still hope to publish that year in review, but in my address I was going to make the case for accessibility. But then things changed, and so I'm going to do you one better. Right after the Warden's report, or rather after the Friends of Music report now, I'm going to give an update on the progress that the Accessibility Link Working Group has made. I had at one point 18 pages of notes for my rector's report. I've been able to boil that down to 3.5 pages, so be grateful. 2022 was a dizzying year. I've been here only 19 months and 3 days, though who's counting? And I had forgotten that back in January, Evensong was still on Zoom. We didn't return to in-person Evensong and devotions until the 1st of May. We made the transition to the green stage over the course of the year, and many of us are still easing into it. I still long for the day when none of us feels the particular need to wear a mask, or at least not wear one as often, but at least the public health situation is definitely improving. We've had several staff changes this year. Father D'Angelo accepted a new call just down the road. Matthew Whitfield moved with his family to Red Deer, Alberta, where he is now on the staff of the local symphony orchestra. We were happy that they were able to make transitions that improved their family's circumstances, even as we were sad to see them depart St. Thomas's. Their departures resulted in the increase to 3/4 time of both Father James Shire, our interim associate priest, and Elizabeth Anderson, our interim director of music. Because we had a little extra money in the budget due to these staff changes, Corporation authorized me to bring Sean Horobin on board in the spring for a temporary project assisting Christine Cover in the updating and revision of our liturgical materials. The Liturgy Project report details that nicely, and I would refer you to it, echoing my thanks that Christine gives to Sean, Laura Crichton, the staff, and all others who made that project such a great success. Since then, our liturgical materials have been so much more welcoming, user-friendly, and accessible. Our two seminarians, Nicholas Saulnier and Daniel McCarley, graduated this past spring, and both have since been ordained to the diaconate. Nicholas will soon be ordained to the priesthood, and I will be flying to Texas in June to preach at Daniel's priesting. I'm so glad that St. Thomas is a place of teaching, learning, and formation. We have so many people in our midst who are teachers and mentors. In 2022, several of us, including yours truly, benefited from John Stewart's reading biblical Hebrew classes. And anyone who participated in those saw the amazing depth of preparation John poured into each session, for which he has my gratitude. Jess Nee and Sean Horobin also co-led a book study on Beyond Smells and Bells in Advent. Speaking of Jess, I am beyond grateful for her work as lay pastoral associate these past several months. Her work in this area has been of incalculable help to me and to Father Shire, and to many of you who have benefited from her conscientious and caring ministrations. Jess continues to help us build and sustain systems for more effective pastoral care and prayer, ably aided by Ronwyn Guest, who maintains our daily and weekly intercessions lists and prepares monthly cards that we send out in batches to those parishioners and friends for whom we have current addresses with Christine Cover's help. The most recent batch was in the letter S, and it was good to see at least 2 people with surnames beginning with that letter at the Thursday Mass just this past week, having been informed that they would be prayed for by name at that Mass through those cards. If your name falls between A and R, but you have not received a pastoral care and prayer card in the past year or so, please let Christine Cover know so that she can add you to the address labels she provides Ronwyn each month. If your name falls between T and Z, and you want to be sure you aren't missing out, feel free to check with Ronwyn or Christine to make sure you're already on that list. I'm incredibly grateful to all the staff already mentioned, as well as Eli McNeely, our sexton, and Scratch Anderson, our bookkeeper, for their dedication, hard work, and above all, good humor. Be sure to read Riggs and Toots' report on the live streaming ministry if you haven't already. He thanks several people there whose work is otherwise entirely hidden from view. Among them, Bob Kennedy, whose work in the installation and operation of the sound system and live streaming systems was a labor of love which will benefit the church for decades to come in ways that we have yet fully to comprehend. Rickson himself deserves special praise for the way he has poured his heart, mind, soul, and strength into this ministry on behalf of us all. I have never seen anyone who receives criticism better than Rickson. It falls to me in particular to thank the wardens and treasurer for their dedication to this parish and above all, for their commitment to meaningful deliberation and discernment. I've been fortunate in my ministry to work with many good and faithful lay leaders, but I am particularly blessed with the entirely trustworthy leadership of Lauren Swan, Carol Hart, Jess Nee, and Phil Stewart, ably advised at all times by Tim Wright, our treasurer. Beyond corporation, much of the work that keeps this parish going is undertaken by Rob Kennedy, whose work on the property committee has been simply superb. Be sure to read his report. Julia Armstrong, along with those she thanks in her report, is the person most responsible for ensuring that St. Thomas's stays connected to the people, neighbors, and friends of this parish. The Ministry of Communications is central to who we are as a parish. And Michael Rowland and Willem Hart have dedicated their lives to this parish, overseeing a capital campaign and stewardship campaign. They, among others, are responsible for a 27% increase in pledge dollars this year compared to last. Yet even beyond their fundraising prowess, they are truly worth their weight in gold. I've already mentioned a few volunteers, but I would be remiss if I did not publicly recognize Agnes Serhati, who's probably not known to many of you. She's also mentioned in the Interim Associates report. Agnes has the distinction of being someone who has volunteered her considerable talents despite the fact that she has only ever attended St. Thomas's in person once, prior to the pandemic. She joins us regularly via live stream, and I consider her as much as a parishioner as anyone here. And there are others, I know. This is an oblique appeal, of course, to those who join us via live stream to let us know how you would like to be involved in our common life, even from afar. You'll be hearing in detail about the Friends of Music initiative. And I should point out that formally and informally, many people gave me valuable advice on the music program this year, among them in no particular order, Ian Alexander, Julia Armstrong, Rob and Anna Kennedy, Michael Rowland, Larry Beckwith, Terry Dunn, Jennifer McCollum, Jordan Baldwin, Shannon Hallowell McDonald, Riggs and Toot, Mark Wood Solomon, David Campbell, Carol Hart, Crystal Saylor, Greg Dunn, Lori Bickerton, and so many others whose names I have not been able to summon at the moment. They've been very helpful in the discernment that we have been undertaking. As I read through the many reports already posted, as I read through them, rather, I tried to ensure that everyone was properly thanked and recognized. There are just so many people who make this parish what it is, among them the Acolytes Guild, the Altar Guild, the Coffee Hour Coordinators, the Flower Guild, particularly the unheralded Lindsay Squire, Ernie Chamberlain, and Gail Harcourt, who bring such natural beauty to the church week in and week out without public recognition. Add to these the lectors, the sides people, the 930 intercessors. Every report listed online testifies to the faithfulness of the people in this place. You must be sure to read Shaban Dungan's Sunday school report if you have not already. It's been so encouraging to have her presence and work with the children of this parish, and I am so grateful that she provides such a welcoming space for families. There are several groups who make St. Thomas's what it is, who have not submitted any reports, but who deserve our thanks nonetheless. The people who join us via live stream, the university students who join us for our services, all our visitors, newcomers and neighbors and friends, everyone in our database, and those known as of now only to God who are praying for us. I will round out my thanks by recognizing those who have committed themselves to our daily prayer and Sunday Mass on a regular basis, especially Traver Carlson, Sean Horrobin, David Jones, and Father Shire, whom I look forward to seeing on an almost daily basis, as well as Andrew Smith, John Fraser, Maureen Somerville, Felicity Pickup, Jess Nee, and Sean Forsyth, all of whom have served as regular weekday officiants at the daily office. An enormous debt of gratitude goes to Daily's Mass celebrants, Father Teo Ipema, Father David Brinton, Father Brian Bartley, Father Pierce Carefoot, Father Douglas Stout, Father Don Byers, and to Father Shire especially, who is in charge of scheduling our daily Mass and Sunday celebrants and evensong officiants. Father Shire truly makes the trains run on time. If you didn't hear your name in this report, it's probably because it's in my 18 pages of notes and never made it into my final draft. I decided not to mention some of you by name because you are so highly praised elsewhere in the reports already mentioned. Be assured that we do see you, know you, and love you. I'm grateful that you are part of this community, and above all, I'm grateful to Ann Stone, my wife, who strictly charged me not to thank her publicly. I'm also thankful to Coco. I'm going to go to my confessor soon, though, so I now have something to confess. Though I don't think that a public display of love and gratitude, however embarrassing to the recipient, is a sin, and is pretty much behind every good thing I do here. That is not an overstatement, and you all should know that if you don't already. Finally, I have a few announcements to make. I'm very pleased to announce that we will soon receive a bequest in excess of $30,000 from the estate of J.P. Napier. Just today, I was handed the paperwork on that. Those of you who knew J.P. know that he was no tycoon. This fact only goes to show that every bequest counts. If you have not already remembered in St. Thomas's in your estate, I ask that you do so in 2023. I would also ask that you not die in 2023 or anytime soon. But as we approach Lent, now is a good time to ensure that the people you love the most and the places you love are cared for after you are no longer with us in the flesh. I'm pleased to announce that the Living Church Foundation, publishers of the magazine of the same name available in the narthex, will be working with St. Thomas's and St. Paul's Bloor Street as Bishop Jenny Anderson and I co-lead a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2024. The dates have been chosen, and they are Tuesday, April 2nd through Friday, April 12th. So save those dates, April 2nd through April 12th. We already have a draft itinerary and are in the process of getting quotes on airfare, hotels, meals, and entry fees. We should have an all-inclusive price tag to advertise soon. Best of all, if you are a young person or retired person in good health who has the time but could not otherwise afford this trip, I want to hear from you. Bishop Jenny and I are planning on making the pilgrimage affordable for those who need financial assistance. So stay tuned and let me know of your interest in the meantime. On the topic of pilgrimages, Father Eric Beresford of the Church of St. Mary Magdalene and I are going to look into a joint parish pilgrimage to Walsingham in England in 2025. We have not yet laid the groundwork for that trip, but we thought it only fitting to announce this at our respective vestry meetings as a token of our desire to cooperate more often with each other in worship and fellowship. With St. Thomas's partnering with St. Paul's Bloor Street to the east and St. Mary Mag's to the west, I believe we are entering into a new era of mutual enrichment. I've always defined myself as a priest who plays well with others, and these two pilgrimages illustrates that point nicely, I think. And I look forward to continuing to play well with all of you as we engage in serious fun at St. Thomas's in 2023. Thank you very much. At this point, I would now call upon Jess Need to present the rector's report, the warden's report, since I've already done the rector's.
Nearly got a promotion. Thank you, Father. So I'm here to speak to the warden's report. Just to give an overview of it, just because you already have a written report in your booklets. And just a note, many of the things touched on here are also described in greater detail, both in the property report and will be spoken to in the accessibility link update to come. And also, because we work so closely together, a lot of the things that we've touched on in our report have also been already graciously and articulately covered in the rector's report. So thank you, Father Humphrey. So as Father Humphrey mentioned, accessibility has been a key theme for us this year. It was a key consideration in determining masking policies and other COVID protocols. For example, we removed restrictions slowly and carefully so that the sacrament and our services were accessible, even to the vulnerable and those nervous amongst us who were returning to church. We also, case in point, have new sound amplification in the church, which has been long overdue. For those who have trouble hearing, and though not mentioned in our report, we've improved visibility through relamping the chancel and the nave with LED bulbs. I don't know if you've noticed the difference, but we have the option of making it quite a bit brighter now. So, we've also made an investment in establishing our live stream, which makes our services accessible to those who can't be physically present, like Agnes, as Father Humphrey mentioned. This is something that we are continuously improving. And fourthly, we reconstructed the southwest steps so that people can more safely access our building. And you may also notice on the topic of accessibility, we now keep both doors to the church unlocked during the day, which thrills me, frankly. And fifthly, finally, we continue to work with KPMB on the design for the accessibility link, which will be spoken to shortly, which will ultimately make the parish hall and church accessible to those with mobility disabilities. So our profound thanks to Bob Kennedy, who oversaw the installation of the sound and video systems. Thank you also to Riggs & Toot for taking charge of operating this new system. And thank you to Rob Kennedy for serving tirelessly as our property chair this year, including coordinating the reconstruction of the entrance steps. And a hearty thank you to the generous donors who made both of these projects possible. The report goes on to mention the change in leadership, with Father Chris D'Angelo, our associate priest, moving on to be priest in charge at his own parish, and Matthew Whitfield, director of music, moving with his family to Alberta. And we were blessed to already have in our midst two wonderful and extremely capable individuals who could step into those two roles on an interim basis, so Father James Shire and Elizabeth Anderson. And over the past several months, we've been considering the future direction of music at St. Thomas's, and which will also be touched on later in this meeting, and the related staff needs. Also this year, we had the pleasure of celebrating the 10th anniversary of Tim Wright in his role as treasurer. As we will see today especially of all days, this is an extremely important role and one that he does so well. This anniversary was recognized through a coffee hour presentation and through a special feature in the Thurible. And before I close, the wardens would just like to thank our wonderful clergy, Father Humphrey and Father Shire, as well as our faithful staff, Christine, Elizabeth, Eli, and Scratch, and all the parish volunteers, who are too many to name, who keep this place running. We have a team here at St. Thomas's that is so capable, so dedicated, and frankly, a delight to work with. So for this, among our many blessings, we give thanks. Are there any questions about this report?
Thank you. Moving right along then, we will have the Friends of Music report. Is that going to be made by Larry Beckwith alone, or is also, do we have another person speaking to it? So Larry, do come up and speak to the Friends of Music.
Thank you, Father, and hello, everybody. Over the course of the last few months, we've been having some meetings led by Michael Rowland and Father Humphrey and involving a number of us, out of which have come this idea of establishing the Friends of Music here at St. Thomas's. And I know there are questions about what is the Friends of Music and who are the Friends of Music. I hope we're all friends of music, and but the initiative is a fundraising initiative to support and further enhance the musical life of the parish. All of the great stuff that is already going on here in the program, and also to bring a little more closely into the fold the so-called outside organizations that rent our facilities from time to time and give music concerts here. So over the course of the next few months, we're going to be giving out more information, but also trying out a number of events here in the church and establishing a fund to which people can donate that will go directly to the music program here and hopefully bear fruit over the next few years in terms of the establishment of, for instance, a children's choir or a young people's music group, various other music activities here at the church as well. These events begin with a Lenten lecture series that I put together on Wednesday evenings during the month of March. And the guests have been chosen very specifically to reflect a wide range of musical topics. And they are, in fact, all friends of St. Thomas's. They've been here in one role or another over the years. Composer Stephanie Martin, another composer Ian Cuson, who is of Métis heritage and is very involved in Indigenous resurgence and those issues. He's specifically an opera composer. Walid Abdul Hamid, who was originally from Sudan and who leads a number of musical activities here in Toronto and is a wonderfully charismatic and beautiful musician. John Aberger, who is the artistic director of the Toronto Bach Festival and who has said many times that when he's come through these doors, he's wanted to have events here at St. Thomas's. And I'm leading off the lecture series on March the 1st with a lecture on the spiritual songs of Bruce Cockburn. So if you can come and join us, you will find out more information about the Friends of Music then. We are also establishing this on the model of Christ Church Cathedral in Victoria, and we've been given a lot of valuable advice from Ian Alexander, who is a former parishioner here at St. Thomas's and who is very involved with the music program at Christ Church Cathedral in Victoria, where they have had tremendous success with kind of breaking down the barriers between so-called inside music making and outside music making, and thought of everybody as Friends of Music. So more information to come. I thank the rector for his faith in me and my co-chair of the Friends of Music, Molly, the internationally renowned and wonderful jazz and blues singer, Molly Johnson, and there will be more information to come. Thank you very much.
I'm going to move over to the pulpit for the next item, which is the accessibility link update. And so we'll get going with that. There, I feel more at home. This is where the clicker is, and where Tim will give his presentation later. I've been asked to give the progress report of the Accessibility Link Working Group, and very happy to do so because this is a project that is very near and dear to my heart. The working group is composed of Rob Kennedy, Greg Colucci, Willem Hart, Janet Stewart, Michael Rowland, Lauren Swan, and myself. So those are the folks who you can ask questions of later, as well as approaching me about it. What is the diocesan process, first of all? Well, before we do anything with our physical plant, we have to go through a diocesan process, and it has several elements. I'm just going to run through those very quickly. We have to have a first step, it's seeking approval in principle, vestry resolution, preliminary plans, estimated cost, and method of financing. And then the second step, when we seek final approval, is we have to have vestry resolution, final plans, actual cost is established, method of financing, and particulars of performance bond. So there's a lot of steps between where we are now and where we want to get. Where in that list are we? We are not even at the first step yet. So that is important to bear in mind. We are not even at the first step yet. This vestry meeting will not be entertaining a resolution on any of this. A special vestry meeting will be called when we are ready to go to the diocese. Now is simply what we're doing today is we are defining the scope of work according to what the working group has seen. Today you'll only see the progress we've made in defining that scope and in what we're thinking of as the cornerstone project of Our Heritage is Our Future, which is our capital campaign. Only when there's broad consensus are we going to take the next step. And then we're going to get detailed drawings and costs. We're going to show you, after we've obtained detailed drawings and costs, we'll call a special meeting, as I've mentioned, and we'll get starting with that first step. Between now and then, we're engaging in community discernment, and this is what's going to help us in that direction. So this is the first step. So KPMB is our architectural firm, and they have sent us some beautiful drawings to take a look at quickly through here. But first of all, we need to define, what are we trying to do? So you're familiar with this, right? This is the entrance to the church. It's a nice little awning with a gutter and two doors, double door and a single door. When you go through the double door, you see steps immediately into the parish hall. When you go through the single door, you see steps immediately into this strange-looking hallway. And so if you've got a baby stroller or you're on crutches or in a wheelchair, that's pretty, or even if you're just, slow going on stairs, that's pretty intimidating. And more than that, actually I'm going to go through this again back. So that door at the end on the left, that goes into a courtyard, which you'll see in a minute. I would note that there's no way to get to the play school or the offices or the kitchen or Father Freeland room upstairs or downstairs or into the basement of the building from the parish hall and back, vice versa, from the undercroft. You just can't get here. You can't get there from here, as they say. That's how you have to get into the church. There's the door into the church right over there, and you're all familiar with that. Go back. This thing is, as I expected, it's a little thing. So this is the courtyard. How many of you hang out there? Few people, yeah. So you'll see when you go out that back door there, this is what you see. That door there is the door to downstairs to the play school and upstairs to the upper offices. That's the window in the right around the corner from the entrance to the kitchen. If you turn around from that wall right there, standing right under that window, this is what you see. The door into that hallway, and then this sort of corridor here. And then if you turn immediately to your right, you see more of the courtyard. This tree is growing right outside the vestry, right over there, and then it leads to a very limited parking area. So this is what KPMB has proposed that we do. The color coding in this is very clever. Each of those is a different level. White is white because it's not even, most of it is not in the plan here. So there's the church floor level, the parish hall floor level, the vestry level, the offices level, and then the ground level. So before I go on to the next slide, I just want to point out that what is proposed is that we take away that awning and we put on a little lobby with glass doors, and immediately you'll see steps as you do now, a few more steps because you're going to go directly up to the church level, to this floor level. Or you can turn and get into an elevator and go directly up to the church level again, turn left and go directly into the church. Or you can go and take a turn and go into the parish hall. There's how to get to the parish hall. If you're in a wheelchair, there's a plywood ramp there. It's a temporary plywood ramp as we look into other solutions. The reason we're doing that is we want to keep the scope reasonable. Because there are several other things we can do with the parish hall that might affect elevations and such, and so the ramp there is a fine solution for now. So if you look ever closer, you'll see that the offices here, we're not doing anything with the offices. We're simply raising this floor here a little bit compared to the floor that exists now, so they'll only be about one step up or so. But if you come out the elevator, you can get into the parish hall, you're on the floor, you can get in the kitchen, you can get in the meeting room, you can go into this corridor there. Or you can go into the church as mentioned previously. In this area, we're planning on putting a universal washroom on the church level. The scope began with, well, let's see, why don't we try and get an elevator in, and then we'll have a universal washroom on the bottom level. And that way, that pretty much solves our problems. But the thing is, if you're in here in a wheelchair and you have an emergency and you need a washroom, do you want to wait for an elevator? I wouldn't. And so you'll see that the solution that we've come up with is filling in that ugly courtyard that you've seen. This infill, this simple infill, presents an elegant solution to all of our accessibility problems. Among them, the one thing you'll see, which you'll be disappointed in maybe, is that the stairs down here disappear because we're all on the same level. So we have to put in a new staircase. However, we've made it so that you can come up the stairs and immediately go into the hallway there, where the organ chamber is, and into the vestry. And we've added one new little feature just for fun, a vestry washroom, so that if you're sitting anywhere from this railing forward and you have an emergency, that's where you go. Right now, if I'm in the vestry and I want to go to the washroom before I start services, I go over to the rectory. That's the closest to me. When you come through this doorway at the other end, you'll have a little steps down to get into the parish hall level, and then the stairway to the play school, and the upper offices will be there. Note the most important thing that this does in many ways is it creates the parish hall as a separate space so that it can be rented out during the week to other groups and used by for other functions. Right now, because of the play school, they have to come upstairs, go into the parish hall, go through the parish hall, down the stairs, through the doors, and over across the street to the playground. They do that several times a day. It's wonderful to see those kids going in and out of the church, and I look forward to seeing them going in and out of the church more, but now through these stairs or that elevator as they need it. This way, they can get in and go to where they're going in a straight line without having to go through the parish hall, without disturbing groups in there. And best of all, if you're able to go in a straight line, if you're standing outside and you say, how do I get to the play school? I don't know what to tell the people right now. Right now, the routine is that the workers at the play school come out to the front door and greet the children and bring them in because it's so complicated to find them. But this creates a lovely direct flow to them. It also connects a nice direct flow into the kitchen for deliveries. So no longer do we have to park in front with in the courtyard and bring everything, schlep them up the stairs through the parish hall into the kitchen. There's a simply delivery route right there. Okay. Also, the bell tower that is above, right there, it's not been relocated. And we'll see what that does with the plans as well. And we might have a skylight in the vestry because, of course, these windows here are being closed off by this new infill, so bringing more natural light in would be solved by having a skylight. All right, so this is the lower level of the church right now, and not much is changing. This is what it looks like as a whole. But what we're focusing in on is specifically this. This is the infill. We're going to make a second level below this level, and it will be where the machine room for the elevator is. And the elevator will be able to come down here, and you'll get out here, and you'll be facing a wall currently. However, in the future, we might be able to reconstitute things so that there's actually an entrance directly into the play school. Right now, there's equipment there that blocks the way and other things, so we can't just do that. But it creates the possibility for direct barrier-free access into the play school. Right now, we don't have barrier-free access, but we do have the second best thing, which is just a few steps in a straight line to get there. The choir would be vesting as usual in the ladies' choir room, and right now in the men's choir room across the way. And then they would come out and they would marshal in the downstairs hallway, and then they'd be ready to come up this stairway, which we specified needed to be wide enough to come up 2 by 2 for the processions into the church as usual. Right now we're proposing that we have another universal washroom right here. And then this area here is unexcavated area, completely unexcavated. When this church was built in 1917, everything from the communion rail to the east wall was extended. It's 25 feet, and that was just built on the ground. So that's one of the reasons why it's that there's no lower level, because it dates to 1917. We could choose to excavate that, however, we're concerned about what the cost might be. If, however, it is not an arm and a leg, there is the possibility that we could have a ladies' choir room, a washroom, and a men's choir room, all there in a row. A nice, simple solution. But that might be for a future project. In any event, we have this cornerstone project which sets the stage for and makes possible future things that are not possible right now. So this is what it looks like in a cross-section, for those of you who are architectural buffs. You can see that there's a lower level and the staircase that goes up into the church and the area there. And then you've got the washroom, and you've got directly link into the play school and the offices above, and then out that way. So what does that look like elsewise? So that's a close-up. That's the main thing that we're looking at. It's a nice, simple, elegant solution. This is what it looks like from above. You see, if you have doll houses that open up from the middle, this is what that sort of view is. You think of this building being opened up like a dollhouse, and this is the bird's eye view, but the close-up is even better. This is what we're talking about. Simple, elegant. And notice this, most importantly, the building don't touch by ceilings or roofs. Every place that the historic building is touched is by glass. So it lets a lot of natural light into the area that's dark right now, and it respects the historic nature of the church building. So this is what things look like from the street. As you can see, not much has changed, but you have this little lobby right there that's added. Everything else is pretty much the same. As you get closer, you see that there's this structure, which is the lobby. This is not necessarily its final form. This is simply the size of the massing, as they say. This is what it's going to look like. This is how big it will be. The materials that will be used to finish that are still up in the air, but we like the vertical lines here. They go with the other lines of the historic buildings and make possible other things to be done with the parish hall when we redo the offices, for instance, if we bring in more light there. Inside, you go up those stairs, and this is immediately what you see. You see that's how you're oriented there on the map. And I'm going to take you in for a little bit of a close-up there. This is what you would see down the hall. Those are the exposed, these are the parish hall right now. Now, all this is white, sort of taupe here. This man is not taupe in real life. This building will not be taupe when it's done with. It's very important that you see this because the imagination has to come into play. None of the finishes have been selected, and so we don't know exactly what the space will look like. However, the architects have said that they can already envisage all this surface being exposed brick because that's what's underneath the plaster right now. Brick. Hey, look, there's brick around here. So it matched perfectly with the church, brick to brick. And we could extend this floor on the same level with the very same type of tile into that area. So there could be a complete continuity of flow of materials and finishes. These beams up here that are there for support could be clad in wood paneling, like the chancel. So the possibility of dressing it up is really endless. But I particularly like the thought of making all the finishes in here echo the finishes in the church, so that the space makes it look like it was always there. That's the goal. It should look like it was always there. And then this is looking backwards the other way. Well, I like to say, by the way, this guy really, I wish they hadn't put him there because he's right in front of the vestry door. I kept saying, hey, would you move out of the way? And the choir has to come up from downstairs, and the MC has to run down to get something. I have to go back and forth there. So this guy's kind of in the way, but I thought that was funny they put him there for scale. So this is looking down. That's their orientation as well. And another close-up of that. So you can see there's the staircase, the door into the vestry area. These are the current vestry windows looking across this infill. And you have all this light. Look at all the light that's coming in. You can see the bell tower from inside the link. The bell tower has a rope that will be hanging down, and this little area here is open, that you can look up and see the bell tower. And then this is when you're getting a little bit closer to the door. Again, here's a close-up that you can see that the space is all very simple, elegant. That's the door to the elevator, and around the corner is the parish hall. I wanted to do one final thing quickly. Everybody says, well, what if you build something out front, it's going to block the windows. It's going to block those windows. It's going to block those windows. Sunlight. So they did a shadow study. This is June 21st, existing massing, as they call it, and this is proposed massing. See any difference? No, because there is none. Shadow study in west entrance, December 21st. You see any difference? This is a Where's Waldo problem. Actually, there is one. I'll show you that. This here, that's the only shadow that it casts below the line of the windows. Isn't that beautiful? And going back to this, so you see inside, that's light now, light then, no change. Light now, light then, no change. So we've really, the architects in particular, have really done their homework and heard us when we said, we really need to respect the historic character of this building. One of the things that people love the most about Mass here is the light streaming in those windows. So we can't do anything that interferes with that. So none of what you've seen answers the big question, however. Guess what that question is? Is it realistic? Is it realistic? That's the I don't know how many $1 million question. I wouldn't be presenting to you if I didn't believe it was, obviously, but this is where community discernment comes in. Is it realistic? Does it inspire? Our heritage is our future. This is a model for discussing the relationship between scope and fundraising potential. This is not my first rodeo. This is my third capital campaign. My very first one where I worked as the associate in Washington, D.C., they did the same thing. They had a courtyard that they enclosed and put a glass roof on it. Very same idea. Second, the last parish I went to had 25 people on a Sunday. Over the course of several years, we raised through grants as well as individuals and gifts outside the parish as well as inside the parish. We raised probably about $5 million for all the projects that we undertook. I mean, it was really quite massive. So this place has a lot more than you guys think you do as far as capacity, not just in the building of you who's sitting here, but also in terms of grants and other donors and philanthropists who will be interested in this, because guess what? Accessibility is a no-brainer. So, the donor's perspective. If I'm a donor, I've spent a lot of time with big dollar donors. I have sat down with billionaires. And this is what they ask. How ambitious is it anyway? Does it meet the essentials? Does it actually meet your needs? Because I don't want to just write a big check if it's overly ambitious. Let's just be realistic here. Come on, there's everybody who wants to sit down with me and have a meeting. Well, but is it ambitious enough? Does it just solve your problem and then that's it? Let me tell you, an elevator and a washroom on the lower level didn't. This does. Is it too ambitious? Well, sometimes they're big things that you just know, that's just pie in the sky. We want donors to look at this project and ask, why didn't we do this years ago? This just makes so much sense. It's a no-brainer. Why didn't we do it years ago? Because when we start asking this question, why didn't we do this years ago, the donors say, whatever you are, even if you can give $10 or $5 or $250,000, whoever you are, you'll know the costs of excavating and of putting in an elevator and construction, they aren't getting any cheaper as the years go by. So the time to do it would be, hey, how about now? So here's a hypothetical example. I emphasize that this is a hypothetical example of the dynamic relationship between the scope of work as it's defined and inspiration. That is, how inspiring is it? If you imagine a scale of 1 to 10, if I present you this presentation, you say, that really was underwhelming. That was not inspiring at all. What a meh. Then you're going to really, that has a correlation to how much money you can raise. Let's say we had an elevator and a washroom on the lower level, and that was going to cost about $3 million. And it had a meh reaction, 1.5 on the Richter scale of inspiration between 1 and 10. We might end up raising, hey, $2 million, even though people will say, well, yeah, we need an elevator, we need a washroom, might as well do it now, here you go, right? So, there's a relationship, a dynamic between them. But then what if we have an elevator and an accessible washroom on the church level? That is, you've got the elevator, and then you've got somewhere around here, like where the Sedalia is around the corner, you've got a washroom. Hey, wow, that's a $5 million project maybe. It's, okay, yeah, I'm more enthusiastic about that. Yeah, we'll kick in a little bit more. Maybe you'll be able to raise $3 million. Let's say it's an elevator, an accessible washroom on the church level, an enclosed atrium, and lower level rooms, basically what you just saw. Maybe that's an $8 million project. We don't know. But maybe that's more inspiring to people, especially more inspiring to people outside the parish than inside the parish sometimes, because accessibility, all those groups that use our parish hall, all the groups that would want to use our parish hall, you know how many groups we turn away because we say, sorry, we're not accessible? It's an income loser for us right now. Our buildings are costing us money in that way. We could leverage what we've got to raise funds to use them as income source in those the parish hall and the upper offices as well. But it might be a 7. You might not be like off the charts excited about it. I am, but you might not be. And you raise $6 million. And let's say it's an all-inclusive capital campaign. We already tried that a few years ago, you may recall. Let's say it cost $20 million, but it's less inspiring than the right size project. And so it raises less than the right size project, and only a little bit more than this. And so there's a dynamic relationship between scope and inspiration. And you have to ask yourself, how inspiring is it? Because the more inspiring it is, the more people are going to want to give to it. Note that none of the projects in this scenario reaches the total fundraising goal. So how realistic is it? We'll see. But an inspiring project raises enough to get things done, even within a reduced scope. And it raises measurably more than a less inspiring project, meaning that we can do more. So if we pitch something small, we'll get something small. That's how it works. Because this is a Goldilocks problem. You know that story. This bed is too small. Minimum goals are not inspiring to donors or the community. They set us up for failure. Underselling leads to underperforming. The Huron-Sussex Neighborhood Organization, several hundred people recently over the past year, went to our website to give to the Three Sisters fundraiser for Afghan refugees. We know the neighborhood wants to be involved in us for worthy causes that they see. If they see this as making possible more meetings here, guess how many neighbors are going to give to us, even if they never walk through these doors on a Sunday? Pretty significant. This bed is too big. Overly ambitious projects may be inspiring, but they don't always garner the necessary support. They feel unattainable from the very beginning. Can't believe we're trying to do this. And that sets us up for failure. Overselling leads to underperforming. This bed is just right. Right-sized projects may still end up falling short of their fundraising goal, but they are designed to fail. They're designed to fail within reason. Minimum goals can still be accomplished, and people end up feeling good about what happened. Now, I'm not a defeatist. I'm an optimist. I think that the Goldilocks solution is in front of us. We can have a perfect vision, remember, for a project that solves all our problems and provides beautiful and elegant solutions. This one does not solve all our problems. It just sets the stage. But if the scope is out of proportion to perceived reality, it will be less inspiring than a reduced scope that sets the stage, as this one does, for future projects. Our goal is for this cornerstone project to anticipate future projects while also being achievable in its immediate scope. So that's what we've been looking at. This bed is just right. It's just right. And I'll tell you, when I saw this, I said, I can sell this. I will go to everybody I know and say, look at this. Look at what St. Thomas's is doing. And it's not just for us. It's not just for us. It's for anybody who sets foot in this place for whatever reason, any reason whatsoever. This, by the way, is evangelism as well. You can't get people in the building to hear the message if they can't get in the building. And I'm going to tell a story here. Actually, I'm inspired to tell one brief story. I'm a preacher, after all. Molly Johnson, many of you know her personally. She grew up in this parish. Her father was a sidesperson. Remember serving as a sidesperson? Later in his life, he was wheelchair-bound. And when he was reduced to being in a wheelchair, he had two strapping sons who carried him into church one Sunday. And he enjoyed the Mass. Next Sunday, they carried him into church again. The Sunday after that, they said, all right, Dad, it's time to go to church. Molly Johnson told me the story. It's time to go to church. He said, I don't want to go. I don't want to feel like that, being carried into church. It's undignified. He had been here every single Sunday, practically, of his whole life, ever since he arrived in Toronto and found this church. He stopped going. Where'd he go? Redeemer. They had an elevator, a ramp, accessible washroom. When he died, and where did his wife keep going? Redeemer, around the corner. I love Redeemer, but I love this place more. Molly Johnson agrees with me that this bed is just right. Molly Johnson knows a few people. Molly Johnson says, oh, you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to have a concert, a fundraising concert. You think we're going to put it in the parish hall? We'll have it somewhere else. Michael Rowland was there at a Molly Johnson concert at the Art Gallery of Ontario the other day. And I meant to put the picture in this slide set. In fact, I forgot to. And he showed me that big atrium there that's at the Art Gallery of Ontario. It was packed for Molly Johnson. And she has raised millions and millions of dollars for various causes. And she believes in this. She also believes in our Friends of Music initiative, which is why she's our co-chair now. So if Molly Johnson believes that this bed is just right, who am I to gainsay her? So remember, though, we're not even at the first step. Today, you've seen the progress we've made in defining the scope of work and what we've been thinking of as the cornerstone project of our heritage is our future. Only when there's broad consensus within the St. Thomas's community will we move forward and take the next step. So the community discernment is all about hearing from you. How do you see these plans? What do you find inspiring? What are you worried about here? How do we determine what is realistic? So we're happy to entertain a few questions now, But what I really want to emphasize is that you should feel free to email or talk to me or any of the Accessibility Link Working Group members between now and the 5th of March. Why the 5th of March? On the 5th of March, the Accessibility Link Working Group will have a historic meeting. It will be our very first meeting in person. We've been doing all of this via Zoom and a few little one-on-one, two-on-one on-site meetings with the architects. And we're going to meet and go over these plans, get your feedback with your thoughts, and we'll be refining things, looking especially on the lower level because that's the most undefined area, and we'll see where we go from there. Do we have any questions from our live stream audience or from the floor at this point? No? So just to give me a sense of whether I've been talking in the wind or not, how many of you are kind of impressed by this? Good. It impresses me. It'll impress a lot of people. Thank you. So now I'd like to call on Tim Wright to come forward to take his.
That's a hard act to follow. Oh my goodness. And up here too, wow. Okay. So if we could start that. So I'm going to keep this, hopefully, how's the volume?
It's good.
It's good, okay. I'm going to hopefully keep this fairly concise or brief. Just before I get started, I mean, this is the 10th budget that I've presented, as just mentioned, after that fateful meeting with Phil in 2012. I'm quite honored to actually be here. And when I was looking at this, I went back to the household of God to look at some of the history of this place. And when you go back and look at the trials and tribulations from the start, from buying this property for $2,507, which was actually a deal at the time, apparently, shows you we had wise wardens and good governance. The debt was paid off by the 1930s. So St. Thomas's had the benefit of that. But it's gone through so much, so many things have happened here. And the latest has been COVID. But I think that it's truly inspiring and exciting to see what we current stewards can do with this place, both with the liturgy and the music you'll see when we talk about that, to take it forward. And it's got growth and life ahead of it. The history is its history, but there's a fantastic future ahead of this place. And it is an honor to share what the wardens and advisory board have come up with, where we've been this year and where we're looking at next year. So that's what I'd like to talk to and share. So I have the control here. Okay. So in terms of agenda, 3 items. We'll talk about the year that's just passed, and then take up any questions on the financial statements, which you all have, the audited statements, and then look at the plans for this coming year, for 2023, and then any kind of questions to go through those. And then finally, sort of matter of business, we'll appoint auditors for this coming year. So I thought it would be interesting to take a little bit look back. So what I've done here is I went through like the last 20 years of some of the financials, and this looks at 2003 to 2022, so 19 years later, and it's pretty darn similar. This is these charts are the makeup, the percentages of each of the major pillars of the church in terms of the operating fund. So what I found was that property, administration, very, very similar in terms of the percentage of the spend. Notably, music was quite a bit higher. Music was actually more than the clergy in those days. Not with the assessment to the side for the minute, but recall that we were probably music was about right, but clergy was underserved. This was before we kind of brought in a full-time associate. So those are kind of the big numbers. But when we come to today, going from 400,000 to 700,000, it's about a 3% increase per year. So maybe a little bit more inflation, not a whole lot more. So kind of makes sense to me. But I think you'll see the mix. Some things are probably low, but that's the way we go. But so in terms of the mix of where we spend the money, I don't think there's anything that really jumps out at me in terms of why we're doing that. It's consistent with our history, and over that period there's been changes, and I'm not going to go through all those. But I just want to sort of set in context that where we are today, coming out of COVID, so 2 years ago, quite different. But where we're coming today is kind of consistent, with our history. So just a bunch of numbers on here. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is actually the third row, which is operating deficit. So that's simply the difference between the operating fund, so operating income, and then all of the related expenses, excluding amortization, excluding depreciation. So just looking at cash expenses. So that number, you can see the percentage of the total. So that percentage is the percentage of that deficit plus the income. So if, in a sense, that's what's funded through the transfers, through the investment income, through the Larkin Trust and Endowment. I thought it was an interesting note also in Household of God when I was looking at it. Ian Whitmore did a very good essay. It can be a bit dense at spots, but it's very informative. And he talks about go back to the 50s, the Larkin days, when the church was coming out of a time where there was the Depression, the demographics had shifted in the annex, and there were a few big benefactors like Gerald Larkin, who collected that time, gave up to about 40% of the income to this place. And he remarks how that's a pretty big number, and it is. But this is compared to that 40%, this is kind of where we are now, 17 to 20%. So historically, it's really not all that unusual or different. But I'll draw your attention to two key numbers there. One is 171,202, which is where we planned to land a year ago. The 187,000 is where, in fact, we did. So it's about 16,000 worse than where we anticipated. Now there's reasons for that. So that's what I'd like to walk you through. So this chart is sometimes referred to as a waterfall chart. But what we do is we start at the 171,000, and then the green bars are the things that happened over the year that put us more in the plus. And I won't say bad, good, plus, minus, but so as Father Humphrey mentioned, the main things are staffing. So Matthew left in the middle of the year, in the summer, as did Father Chris. So those two items basically put money back in the coffers because we didn't replace them full time. Elizabeth stepped in on a part-time basis. We looked at a assistant that didn't materialize. So through her yeoman service, we operated basically the savings. Similarly with Father James stepping up, that gave some savings. So not something that we planned, not something we would want to happen, but it did create savings. Now, there was also a number, and I know there's more negatives than the positives, but that's kind of life. In terms of the things that didn't quite come to plan, was some of the trust income. So we had lower trust fund income. Now that was kind of a decision, right? That some of that is actually the Father Freeland Trust, for those that are curious about that. And that is money that is given to the church generously by Father Freeland while he was alive, which is tied to projects that are decided by the warden. So one of those projects was to fund an associate music director, assistant music director, which didn't happen, so we parked those funds. So that's kind of why that's a negative. There were also some income that, I'm trying to read my own card. There was also some other donations that were lower than expected. Corpus Christi had given some money. It wasn't quite what we expected. It's fine. And then beyond that, property was higher, kind of out of our control in the short term. So utility costs, I mean, everyone, I think, many people are feeling that. I just got my gas bill for $400 in January. So there's some things that are out of our control. Others, the sanctuary costs we're learning. So live streaming cost was higher than we planned, but that's, frankly evolving, and we're figuring that out as we go. The last one was, as Father Humphrey mentioned, administrative expense. So we reinvested some of those savings with Sean's contract. So all of that kind of goes together to say that we had $16,000 higher deficit, which was funded by the trust endowment. So we did still have that COVID effect where 3 years ago we took no money out at all. And then so kind of have the advantage of the last couple of years that we can capitalize on that without guilt and go for there. So that's what I wanted to share with you. In terms of the actual numbers, do I have those numbers here? No, I don't. Okay. So those numbers are in your package, the actual results, and I'd open it to any questions that you'd have here. Do we have a microphone set up here, or? There's a stand right here. Oh, right. So feel free to use the stand or text from anyone who is live streaming. Or I guess you could shout out, but we do want it, I think, on the microphone.
Going once, going twice. So we're at the point 8, the audited financial statements?
Yes, we are.
Right. So I would entertain a motion at this time to accept the audited financial statements for 2021 as presented.
2022.
I'm sorry, there's a typo there. 2022 as presented by Tim Wright. Is there a motion there? So a motion by Lawrence Vaughn, second by Anna Kennedy. All in favor say aye. All right, opposed, no. Abstain? All right, motion carries. Thank you. So continue on to the budget.
Thank you very much. All right, so budget. So before we start, I would draw your attention to the warden's letter in your vestry book. So the wardens have done an excellent letter talking about the
page 23.
Thank you. It talks about the strategy behind the budget, and one thing that impresses me from this discernment experience has been the thought and care that the wardens, Father Humphrey, and advisory board have contributed towards a meaningful budget. Not to mention Michael's work on stewardship. So we had a whole stewardship campaign that responded to the ask for additional funds, and you'll see that impact in this budget. So again, similar to the last chart, this is showing sort of the ups and downs, puts and takes as we go from 2022 actual deficit of 187,000 to the proposed deficit of, what's my number? I can't even read it from here, 170, I think it is. So there, end of the day, those aren't all that different, but the makeup is different. So in terms of the contributions here, as I mentioned, the response to stewardship was quite dramatic at $45,000. So that is taking givings up to about $400,000 from $350 this year. So that is quite a response from that campaign. So geared towards music. Now, in addition, The next line is actually cost savings. So remember, this is the net position. So we have both income and we have cost. So the $18,000 are one-time expenses that we incurred last year. There's two major items. One of them is the contract. The other is some immigration work that was one time. So that gives us, which is a pretty good investment, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was for me.
So we have to catch up with the Brighton family to get your PR status, So those are the kind of the first two. The next big one, and probably the biggest one, is the biggest one here, is Friends of Music. So that is a major campaign. And I think of the history of the church, this is one of those moments perhaps when we're, along with accessibility, when we're transforming in a sense. And I really love the idea of reaching out to the community, which is something you've seen in the history of this place, whether it's social justice or mission work or working with the convent. There's been this tradition of reaching out and building bridges, and I think it's another one of those. So those are kind of the big elements that build, give us opportunities. And then the purple lines are the investments. So largely, so the 48,000 is that music investment. So that's bringing in full-time musicians mid-year. So it is a partial year impact, but that's a full-time director of music and a full-time assistant director of music to support music. It also assumes a full complement of section leads to support the services through the year. We've actually been underspent in that area over the last few years, so this is really building up to what we've had historically. From there, it's really, there was some one-time revenue last year. The main things there that I would convey is the staffing, so salaries and benefits. So the diocese has a 3% cost of living that the wardens are approving for all of lay and clergy, lay staff and clergy. It's not just the 3%, there's also I think it's 4% increase in statutory benefits, or EI and CP. So it's our friends in Ottawa as well that drive that, but that's obviously an investment. And then the last one I'll call out is just live streaming. So Riggs has provided a plan, a budget to continue to improve and stabilize that. So that reflects kind of right-sizing what we feel we really need for that. So that is the plan. Now, I do have the actual numbers there for them that wants it. So this is all of the income. Again, it's in your book. All of the income items, both from 2 years ago to the budget last year, to where we landed, $524,000 in income, to where we are going, $728,000. But one thing I will call out is that you'll see a big line item for $132,000, and that is that's already complete. That's the refugee sponsorship. So there's big plans there, and that money has already been raised. So it's fantastic news, and one of the big chunks of that is the Three Sisters campaign. Like we set up, Julia, Kevin, and I set up on the web page, and I think we responded pretty quickly, and we had that ready to go, and they had fantastic response to their campaign. And I gave them reports every week on status, how they were doing, so it was kind of a nice linkage to the church. So I'm not sure what their timing is, but my understanding is that we'll proceed with these. I think it is coming up pretty quickly. So that money will start being spent. There's an identical line item in expense. So you can see there it's in that outreach. So that's an in and an out, but it's an important outreach for the parish. So there's the expenses: clergy, music, sanctuary. Caring is what we do for each other. So that's largely things like Friars Guild, and we haven't done that too much, but any nursery expenses, that sort of thing. Outreach is, of course, how we reach out of the parish. Education events, we used to have education events, hope we can do more. property and administration. Of course, we always have those. So any questions, I guess we open it up to, sorry, before I leave to questions, this is the funding. So you'll see that we've broken it out between we'll call it the Larkin Trust Endowment. I mean, at some point it's going to be more than just Larkin. There was a decision to add to that trust endowment going forward. So where there's bequests, and I think that's the right thing to do, where there's bequests that are not otherwise earmarked for a project, we use them because people are not here in the flesh, but their gift carries on, and we recognize that as endowment funds. And then lastly, heritage, which will, as we evolve, will necessarily need to contribute to the operating fund. Before we take up questions, I'll just shift to the capital budget. So this is the plan that Rob Kennedy has provided for us, which is starting on the accessibility in terms of the study, money which was already raised as part of our Heritage is Our Future, so that's monies we already have. Finishing the railings in the front, one donor has supported that to kind of finish it. And then the residual is frankly some of its maintenance. It's kind of necessary stuff. I don't think there's anything there that would really raise any eyebrows in terms of the spend for capital related items. So, again, any questions?
So I'll just check in if we have we got any texts or any questions from people viewing from the live stream? Okay. You can do so at 647-766-3398. That is the St. Thomas's mobile number. You can text or call. That number is 647-766-3398. If you do, your question will be brought forward by Carol, one of our wardens.
Oh, fantastic.
Yay.
Yay.
Our first contestant, please identify yourself.
Okay, we're going to see.
She's won.
Is it working? Okay. I have a question about the diocesan allotment. So
Yes.
Tim, I've talked to lots of people in this room over the years about how to increase our music program without sort of having a huge increase in our diocesan allotment, how to think of that as outreach staffing, all of the ramifications. So I wonder with this new Friends of Music model, if you could talk a little bit about how this increase in spending might impact on our diocesan allotment.
Wow, you would ask a question like that, wouldn't you? That's a great question. And I don't know that I have the answer to that. It's just so everyone knows, the diocese assesses 25% of any income that we bring in, with the exception of outreach and capital-related spending. So they also rely on us and the wardens, well, I'd say the wardens, to submit a fair and honest return. So I think we kind of have to take that away, because at the surface of it, you're right, that would be accessible and attract a bit. I mean, and also when we look at so one of the things that we will look at, Suzanne, is a multi-year kind of 3 to 5 year view. After vestry, and that was brought up at advisory board. It's a really good point that we need to strategize how we fund that, and if it means that music has an extra 25% cost attached to it, then we may need to look at that.
Yeah, I can actually speak to that. The Stewardship Committee is very well aware of the cost of doing business, which is 25%. Clergy salaries are also, I think,
clergy are exempt from that.
They're exempt from the 25%. So you can raise my salary and not pay 25% to the diocese. Just so you know. Then that means if we bring on a second priest full-time, that is not going to have an impact on our diocesan assessment. However, music staff, increase in music staff will, and so the Friends of Music campaign has built that into our fundraising goals.
That's a better answer, Father. Thank you. Any other questions? Shall we move for
All right, so
approval?
we can call for a motion that the operating and capital budgets as presented by Tim Wright for 2023 be adopted. Is there a motion? I see a motion from Logan. Is there a second? A second? Yes, thank you. So we've got, yes, we've got two here. So we've got Phil, Arthur, and we also have Jennifer. Thank you. So is there any discussion on that? All right. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstain? All right, motion carries. Thank you. We have a budget.
Excellent.
Congratulations. All right, just like to do that. Moving right along to the next thing, right? You've got the auditor. Is that right?
Yes. This is to move for appointment of Wallington Chong,
Yes.
our same auditors for the past several years.
So we're happy with what they're doing, and we're more or less happy with how much they're charging us to do it. And so I'd like to entertain a motion for the appointment of an auditor for 2023. We see that from Anna Kennedy and a second from Earl Barnsley. Thank you. And all in favor? Any questions for all? Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. All right, we're done with that. Okay, moving right along then.
That's my presentation, so I'll pass it over. Thank you very much.
I would entertain a special motion to receive all this with thanks to Tim Wright. Is there a motion? An auditory motion. Thank you. Thank you. We move on to the most exciting part of the day, elections. We have one live election. That means an election that will require a ballot. And for that, I wish to appoint a motion to appoint Elizabeth Barnsley, David Kent, and James Mead as scrutineers. It's one of my favorite words. So I think we need a formal vote on that. Is that right, Lauren? Do we need to vote on that on a motion for that? For scrutineers? All right. If we're going to have an election, we need scrutineers. Is that a vote that we need to take? Or not? Or I just appoint them? No. All right. Well, let's take a vote just to be on the safe side. All right. Is there a motion to appoint those three folks as scrutineers? All right. Thank you. So I see Elizabeth Altonen. Is there a second? Yes. So, okay. Thank you. I've got Jess. All right. All in favor, say aye. All right, great. The word scrutineer reminds me of Mouseketeer. I think you have like special hats for you or something like that. Okay, so running through the nominees for elections, we will take one election for all the people for whom we have a slate, but we have to make sure that there are no nominations from the floor. So our nominees are for People's Warden, Jess Nee. For Deputy People's Warden, Phil Spencer. For representatives to the Parochial Tribunal, Earl Barnsley and Jerry Stewart. For the Advisory Board, the elected members are Matt Agus, Sean Forsyth, and David Jones. Those are at-large members of Advisory Board. Those are all those who are part of a slate. Are there any motions, nominations from the floor for any of those positions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion that nominations for those positions be closed. There's a motion from Bob Kennedy. Is there a second? Second from James Mead. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. So the nominations are now closed. I'll entertain a motion to elect said people to their respective positions. Is there a motion to elect? Actually, we don't need a motion to elect. We just have an election now. So all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that carries. Congratulations to Jess Nee, People's Warden, Phil Spencer, Deputy People's Warden, Earl Barnsley and Jerry Stewart to the Parochial Tribunal, and Matt Agus, Sean Forsyth, and David Jones to the Advisory Board. Now we must have an election for the lay delegates to Synod. Our candidates are Elizabeth Altonen, Vince Mead, John Stewart, and Matthew Nugabar. The top 3 vote getters will be our lay delegates, and the person who comes in fourth will be the alternate lay delegate. So would the scrutineers hand out the ballots and have those marked? Have you already handed them out, or you need to do that now? So we'll go ahead and hand out those ballots. And while you're doing that, I'm going to announce the appointments. So I'm very pleased to announce the rector's appointments of Rector's Warden Carol Hart, Deputy Rector's Warden Lauren Swan, Advisory Board members Sean Horban, Bob Kennedy, and Andrew Smith. I'm also pleased to announce the warden's appointments on their behalf. They've asked me to do so. The wardens are appointing Julia Armstrong as Communications Coordinator, Kevin Blaugrave as Envelope Secretary, Rob Kennedy as Property Chair up through the mid-year, Annalie Pekonen and Wendy Woodworth as sidespersons for the 11 and 5 o'clock respectively, and Tim Wright for his 11th year as Treasurer. Do you wish to speak to any of that? Yeah, we're voting, yes, I'm sorry. So you've got a ballot for 4, but you should only be voting for 3. So it says 3 members and 1 alternate to be elected. So only vote for 3 on your ballot. If you vote for 4, your ballot is spoiled and cannot be counted. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, Matthew? Are nominees allowed to vote? We closed nominations for the... I'm sorry? Okay. Did not hear the question, but if you want to go to Woody and make it, you may. Are candidates permitted to vote in this election? Yes, candidates are permitted to vote. That way you always get at least 1 vote. I'm also pleased to announce the warden's appointments to the organization's representative to advisory board, or rather, these are the organization representatives to advisory board, not the warden's appointments. The organizations listed have put forward Vince Mead for the Acolytes Guild, Anna Kennedy for the Altar Guild, Marianne Stewart for the choir, Siobhan Dungan for the church school. Education remains vacant for the time being, but we have plans. Tim Wright for finance, Friars Guild likewise is vacant for the time being. Pat Kennedy to the library, Martin Kennedy with an alternate Mario Swiss to the meditation group, from the meditation group I should say. Father James Shire representing the Outreach and Friday Food Ministry, Heather Gibson representing the prayer and care team, co-chairs Andrew Gray and Andrew Smith for social justice, and Michael Rowland and William Hart co-chairs for stewardship. All of these will represent their respective organizations on advisory board in the coming year and have my profound thanks. Andrew Gray, I should note, will continue serving in the capacity as president of the advisory board. So all this is what I've just read to you. If you couldn't hear me, that's all written down in your agenda. Okay, so we'll take a couple more minutes to before the ballots will be closed. In the meantime, we will take a motion to authorize signing officers. This is item 13. It's required that Vestry authorize all who will act as signing officers, that is, those who are permitted to sign checks. So I would entertain a motion to authorize Jess Nee, Carol Hart, Lauren Swan, Phil Spencer, and Tim Wright to exercise signing authority on behalf of the parish in the coming year. Is there a motion to that effect? Sorry, yes. Bob Kennedy, and second? And yes, thank you, Crystal Saylor. All right, all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Thank you, that motion carries. Finally, we have a presentation from Andrew Gray. Do you wish to make a presentation on the social justice motion? All right, please do. Please feel free to come to the pulpit and do so, and then once I get all the scrutineer's results, I will announce the results of that election. Yep, right up to the pulpit. It is a very dangerous place. Watch yourself, because
very dangerous place.
A bully pulpit.
All right. Every year, I'm just trying to find it in the book. Every year, the Diocese of Toronto, through its Social Justice Committee and through the College of Bishops, asks each parish at its annual vestry meeting to consider adapt as appropriate to it and adopt a motion addressing a matter of current social justice. I'm just trying to find it in the book. What page? Oh, the final page. Oh, there we go. And a number of years ago, someone had the good idea that we should, in advance, and as part of the vestry book, describe what the motion is for the particular year, which we've done here, and provided a link to material, at least it was on the website, material that the diocese generates. This year, the motion addresses the benefit rates for people who receive Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program benefits, and it asks that we ask the province of Ontario to consider increasing, in this case doubling, the amount of those payments. Those of us who work from time to time at the Friday Food Ministry know that many of our guests at that program have a very difficult time making ends meet on the 700 in the case of Ontario Works, or roughly 1,170 for Ontario Disability Support Programs, to making ends meet every month, including paying rent on that amount. And so I am, subject to questions or discussion, happy to move the motion as it's been adapted for us, and adapted only by inserting our name in the text of the motion. If it's approved, we report back to the diocese, and they keep a record of the parishes that have adopted and those who have not adopted this motion. So I will move that we adopt this motion as on the screen.
That has been moved. Is there a second? All right, second from, I see Janet Nichols back there. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. The social justice motion as presented from the diocese and endorsed by Andrew Gray is adopted. We have other reports. In the interest of time, I would encourage you to refer to the vestry book and those reports. If you have any questions on those reports, now is the time to do that. So if there are any questions or clarifications that you wish to bring up to the vestry as a whole, you may do so now. Otherwise, you may approach the person who submitted that report and interrogate them in person. So those are all of the reports that we so that's the agenda, and we've received quite a few reports. I want to thank everybody who took the time to compose their reports diligently. They were good reading. Let's see. So I would entertain at this point a motion to receive the reports of parish organizations. There's a motion from Logan Lute. Is there a second? Yes, second from Julia Armstrong. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, thank you. I do know that there's one item of other business for which I'm going to call on Hugh Anson Cartwright. You can come directly to the Woody there, the microphone on the stand in the center, and speak to that. And it's already on, so you just speak, and this is for the live streaming more than the room.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw the congregation to the forthcoming Larkin Stewart lecture. I don't know how many of you have registered for it. It's on March the 23rd, and it's going to be held in Seeley Hall at Trinity College. The lecture's by Molly Warthen. If you need more details, I'll be happy to speak to anyone about that. There will be a reception afterwards, and they'd like to know the numbers from the parish and from friends of the Larkin Stewart lecture. So,
thank you. Yes, I do encourage you. There's a link to register for that lecture in the Thurible. Is it also on the website? If not, it can be made so. They'll put it on the website. Thank you. Thank you. So, and if you raise your hand if you're on the Larkin Stewart Lecture Committee.
I beg your pardon?
If you're on the Larkin Stewart Lecture Committee, who are the members of that committee here? I see Pat Kennedy and Hugh.
Betty Ann.
And Betty Ann is also on the committee. So if you have any questions about the Larkin Stewart Committee.
We would welcome more members.
Yes.
because there hasn't been a very strong representation in the last few years.
Right.
And, the Larkin Stewart lectures began in 1969, so this is the 49th lecture, and we hope it can continue.
Yes. Indeed. So this is a joint initiative of Trinity College at the University of Toronto and St. Thomas's Parish. It was established nearly 50 years ago, as we just heard, and it honors Father Stewart, who was rector of this parish, and his good friend Gerald Larkin. Father Stewart and Gerald Larkin met when they were about 19 years old, I believe it was, as acolytes here at St. Thomas's, and it changed their lives. So Father Stewart went to college. Gerald Larkin did not. Gerald Larkin was the heir to the Salata tea fortune and was expected to go immediately into business with his father, and so he did so dutifully. But he was always enamored of higher education and of Trinity College in particular because his good friend Father Stewart had such a positive experience there. When Gerald Larkin died, he gave the largest bequest up until that point to Trinity College. Even before he died, he gave great things. The chapel at Trinity College is given in Gerald Larkin's memory, or not memory. He gave it while he was still alive. He had it built. And then the Gerald Larkin building was built after he died with part of his $1 million bequest. He also left quite a good endowment to us. It forms the lion's share of our endowment at the moment. And there's a plaque over next to Mary there. Anything else? Is there any other business or points of information or announcements for the good of the order?
Pardon?
No? No other questions or announcements? Right. Thank you. Thank you. And so at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. There's a motion from, oh, hey, I see. Sorry? Oh, we need the results of the election, so we're going to have to hold on from Gene Nichols' motion. I'm going to hold that until I get a second. Gene Nichols has moved to adjourn. We'll get a second in just a minute. And we're going to have the results. The envelope, please. Okay, I'm pleased to announce that Elizabeth Altonen and Vince Mead tied with votes of 42 each. Matthew Neugebauer came in third with 25, and John Stewart with 19. So thank you very much for offering yourself for service to Synod this year. So we have an election of Elizabeth, Vince, and Matthew as the delegates, and John as the alternate. So we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second to that motion? Pat Kennedy and Logan Lute. I'm going to recognize Logan's motion as well to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Do you really mean it? Say aye. Ah, you really want to leave? Okay. Well, I'm going to pray. Let us pray. Why don't we do that? Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, who by thy wise and loving Spirit dost guide thy church into the way of truth and holiness, we beseech thee to direct the counsels of us thy servants at this time, that we may be enabled to do those things that are pleasing in thy sight, and may wisely plan for the furtherance of thy church in this place. Remove from us all that hinders thy purposes. Establish among us peace and love, unity and concord, and grant that thy blessing may continually rest upon our worship, our work, and our witness, for the glory of thy Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I declare this vestry adjourned.